All right, so we will start now. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am very happy and pleased to welcome all of you. And on behalf of Los Cabos Training Committee, welcome to our 9th Symposium in Hotel and Human Development. This year, we're focused on the 4 T's, which are talent, trend, transcendence, and transformation. So it is a great honor for me host Ms. Lourdes Heinlein and Jeff Wielgopolan. Both stand out for their great talent, extensive experience, and extraordinary development. So I will introduce Lourdes. Lourdes Heinlein is a talented and seasoned hotel development professional. She joined Forbes Travel Guide in 2014 to lead the expansion of the luxury star rating system in the Caribbean, Mexico, Central and South America. In the later part of her 14 years at Starwood Hotels and Resorts, she successfully launched the Starwood Resort Collection Caribbean and South Florida. So both which share with us the topic, Foundations of 5-Star Service. So thank you both for being here, Lourdes and Jeff, and please go ahead, Lourdes.
Muchas gracias, buenos días a todos. Aquí le hablo de Miami, pero con muchas ganas de estar en Los Cabos. Muchas gracias al Comité de Capacitación por darnos esta oportunidad para hablar, pasar tiempo con ustedes, un poco lejos, pero esto es lo más cercano que podemos hacer. Estamos ahí con ustedes en corazón, en espíritu, y por el virtual vamos a compartir un poquito de lo que sabemos nosotros y lo que hemos visto en el mercado. Así que otra vez, muchas gracias al Comité de Capacitación de Los Cabos, a todos ustedes que están dedicados a lo mejor que se puede ofrecer al huésped. Y gracias a ustedes por dedicar su profesionalismo. Para nosotros es un honor haber entrado en el mercado de Los Cabos hace ya un poquito más de 5 años. Nosotros en Forbes tenemos una historia de casi 62 años, pero no habíamos entrado en México y específicamente en Los Cabos hasta hace 5 años. Hoy en día tenemos un portfolio muy lindo de hoteles que han podido calificar a nuestros ratings. Ustedes se dan cuenta quién son porque pueden entrar a ForbesTravelGuide.com y pueden ver. Yo conozco a muchos de ustedes, he trabajado con ustedes y ha sido un honor. Este año ha sido difícil, pero nos ha dado la oportunidad de compartir más, de poder, las personas que de verdad quieren a nuestra industria y a nuestros huéspedes han tenido la oportunidad de enseñárselo. Yo creo que hoy en día, lo que están haciendo esta semana es un ejemplo de lo que hemos hecho. Así que felicidades, deseándole lo mejor. Es lo que queda de este año y el próximo. It is now, I just want to say thank you again to my colleague, Jeff Wielgopolan, who's our Senior Vice President of Talent and Development, of Learning and Development for Forbes Travel Guide. I'm going to let him say a few words of his extensive experience, but we are all, including myself, very privileged that he took time out of a very busy schedule during a very busy year to spend time with you and be here on the symposium. Congratulations again on your 9th symposium, and it is an honor for us to be here. So Jeff Wielgopolan, please introduce yourself and lend us some expertise.
All right, good morning, buenos dias, everyone. Once again, my name is Jeff Wielgopolan and here from Forbes Travel Guide. I know that my last name is a little bit of a mouthful and is a bit difficult to pronounce. So I like to teach everybody the same way on how to pronounce my name, but it's Wielgopolan. So it's like will go fishing, but Wielgopolan. And I joke that if you say it really fast and mumble, you'll sound just like a member of our family. But of course, we are here to talk about what makes exceptional service. And first and foremost, thank you for allowing us to be here today. And I'd like our session to be a pretty interactive one. I know that it may be streaming on YouTube on a separate channel, or obviously we're here on Zoom. So we do have a chat function. So let's use it. If you have any questions on anything, please don't hesitate to enter them into the chat, or even what would be really helpful for Lourdes and myself is even to just let us know what property you're calling or where it is that you're calling in from, just so that way we have an idea of maybe just who's on the current Zoom. But of course, just to dive in, I work for a company called Forbes Travel Guide, and Forbes Travel Guide awards star ratings to hotels and restaurants and spas. We've been around since 1958, so almost technically speaking, we are the world's second oldest rating company. We'll give Michelin the credit that they deserve for being the first. They've got 57 years on us, but you know, we rate properties in over 70 countries and really look for the best of the absolute best in service. And just to go over a little bit of that global inventory, once again, we have our star ratings throughout North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, and a list of our 5, our 4, and our recommended properties falls down to these numbers on your screen. And the way I always like to describe it is, you know, that a recommended property is a place which may not necessarily score at a 4, but there's something about it that we would recommend a luxury guest to spend their discretionary income there. So whether it's a really amazing location, whether it's an incredible chef-driven style concept restaurant, there's something about the property that, once again, we are recommending it to our consumer. A 4-star property is like the Olympic gold medal winner in service. This is actually where a majority of Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis, Mandarin Oriental, Rosewood properties sit. And from a 4-star perspective, it's a very difficult award to get. It's a very difficult to keep. And once again, it proves that you operate at sort of the best of the best level. So if those are the 4s, then what are the 5s? What we consider the 5s are almost like the Michael Phelps, the Usain Bolts, the Simone Biles of the world, that this is really no longer about a gold medal, but you are almost changing and sort of dictating what hospitality is. That, you know, those athletes sort of change the sport because you're in it. Well, our 5-star properties start to really show the world that if you want outstanding service, like this is what it means. They are almost the first to embrace that creativity, to really show off their personality. And a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today is, once again, at how that personality starts to come out through a set of standards. And if we look at it, you know, we have 282 5, 74 5-star restaurants, 90 5-star spas. You know, a number that when I think about these hotels is, you know, when we start thinking about how many hotels there are in the world. Does anyone want to take a guess and use our chat function? How many hotels are there on the planet? We might have a quiet audience, or everyone's getting their chat ready. What is it? I'm going to rely on a little bit of my high school Spanish, but ¿cuántos hoteles en todo el mundo? All right. Oh, so 100 million? I don't know, it's probably about that. I know that there are about 63,000 hotels just in the United States. So once you start thinking about that number on a global level, you really are talking about hundreds of thousands, if not into the millions. So to be one of 1,300 properties on the planet that either scored or recommended a 4 or a 5 is, once again, it's really, really a testament to how hard the team works and the quality of the service and the product in which you provide. So from what we do and how we do it, I think it's really important to think that when we send an evaluator, and I always like to joke that if you ever wanted to know what sort of a secret shopper hotel evaluator looks like, well, here's a good example of one, because I did it for about 6 years. And I hope I'm not too scary, but I think that when we send an evaluator in to inspect a hotel or a restaurant or a spa, it is their primary goal to actually not trick you and to not make things difficult and to not come up with outrageous requests It's actually their job to just let you do what it is that you do and go along for the ride. That our primary aspect in service is that if we try and trick you, that means we have to do it for every property, and then it becomes its own standard. So our goal is to just let you go along for the ride. And if we're having a great arrival or a great room service experience, we will do nothing to ruin it. Just let it happen. That said, if we are not having a very good arrival or not having a very good room service experience, the evaluator will do nothing to help you. And it's their job at that point to just sadly watch the whole thing fall apart and report on it later. And I know that that sounds very tough, but I also think that's pretty consistent to the way an average guest experiences a hotel. I don't know of any guest that is checking in at the front desk and halfway through their check-in process looks across the desk and says, you know, Lourdes, we've been together for about 2.5 minutes now, and although you got my name at the beginning of registration, you haven't used it yet. So would you like to start? I guess don't talk like that, right? They just go along with the experience and what it is that we provide, we have to be the best at. So a couple of things that are very, very near and dear to us, and I think it's really important to spend some time talking about them, is what does service mean? And of course, facility. I think facility is probably pretty self-explanatory. But when we talk about service, sometimes what we notice at a really great hotel or the way it really operates, that we can talk about it being seamless and easy and effortless. And most often those experiences come from each department working together. And quite often a hotel tends to work in a silo. And what we mean by that is that the front drive is managed by somebody, the front desk is managed by somebody, and the bell team is managed by somebody. And when you have 3 different leaders all operating independently, arrival starts to get very choppy. And it starts to get sometimes a bit annoying that everyone's offering you the same thing, everyone's asking you the same questions. So something that is incredibly near and dear and important to us is that an experience is evaluated, not a department. So it's arrival isn't the front drive and the front desk and bell. Arrival is the moment in which you arrive until the moment in which you are left alone in your room. And sometimes a fun example of this is I'll role play with myself for a moment. But let's say I call down for room service and I call down and the phone rings, ring, ring. Thank you for calling in-room dining. This is James. How may I assist you? Yes, I'd like to order some dinner, please. Absolutely. Am I speaking to Mr. Wielgopolan? I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your name? Oh, it's Wielgopolan. It's like we'll go fishing, but Wielgopolan. Oh, absolutely, Mr. Wielgopolan. And we continue on with our order. 30 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. I open it. There's a room service staff member standing there saying, good evening. My name is Eduardo. I'm here with your dinner. May I come in, Mr. Wielgopolan? Like, oh, it's Wielgopolan, but yes, come on in. Enjoy your dinner. You call for a pickup 15 minutes, 20 minutes later. Good evening. Thank you for calling room service. This is Michael. How may I assist you? Yeah, can someone come up and collect our dishes, please? We're done with our dinner. Absolutely. How did you enjoy everything, Mr. Wielgopolan? And then a little bit while later, someone comes up to collect the table, opens the door. Good evening, Mr. Wielgopolan. My name is Jeff. I'm here to collect your dishes. What's wrong in this scenario? The funny thing is that everyone is trying to be nice and everyone is trying their hardest to say a guest's name. Like everyone's doing their best. But what ends up happening is that as a guest, you actually get to watch people not communicate with each other. And even more so, you have 4 people who all work in the same department not speak to each other. And so I think that this is where, as a guest, sometimes you start to realize, like, wait, And you start to like build up and build up and build up. And then one day someone is just going to say, oh, Mr. Wielgopolan, how do you pronounce your name? And the guest is just going to almost freak out and say, like, just call me Jeff. I'm done with it. And that staff member may think to themselves like, oh, the guest doesn't want us to use their last name. It actually probably isn't that. It's probably that that staff member is the 25th person that is asked in, you know, a day and a half, 2 days. And what the guest watches is that there's just no communication, because to them, it's an experience. It's not a department, right? So we just need to be really mindful that we set processes up in our hotel that allow each team member to communicate, that once we get this little golden nugget of information, we are able to collectively pass it on to make sure that as a guest, their experience is really cohesive, right? And we can think about it in all different ways. If a guest makes a reservation and says that they have a really serious gluten allergy, and then every restaurant they go on property, they're always asked, do you have any allergies? As a guest, like, your confidence starts to diminish a little bit, because what you're realizing is that, well, why did somebody ask me? And then the information never goes anywhere, right? And then if we can just make sure that everybody is muted, we are getting some background noise. Thank you. And then if anyone has a question on anything, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat. I'm checking it every once in a while. So, and then when we talk about quality and consistency in service, this is where it starts to get really fun. What we mean by consistency actually isn't, is everything the same from day to day to day. We actually really don't care if it is from a Forbes Travel Guide perspective, because we only evaluate something once in order to see if it's consistent. Just like an average guest, you only get one arrival, you get one departure, you get one guest room. We're not testing some things twice or 3 times and then other things once. Everything gets one shot. So what we mean by consistency is that, is everything consistent within itself? And does it paint that picture? So if you're in this really beautiful hotel, then are the words that are coming out of everyone's mouth just as beautiful? Is their posture just as sharp, right? Is their uniform just as clean? You know, I think about with everything that's going on in the world now with the pandemic, of, you know, that there's this very, very heightened sense of cleanliness and sanitization and hygiene, that almost anything sticks out right now that's a little dirty, that's a little worn, if people aren't wearing their face mask properly, that it just chips away at the idea of consistency, right? That you're in this beautiful place, but then the people that are in it aren't necessarily as beautiful in their delivery. And from a quality standpoint, what we mean by quality is that the way that all of the standards work is that they're always 100% a yes or a no. There are no halvesies, there are no 3/4 of a point, it is all or nothing. And really what we're looking for is almost that on the team, that you're only as strong as the weakest person on it, because that one person has the ability to take that experience and change it and compromise the guest experience. So from a service and a facility standpoint, that, you know, we really do believe that anybody can build a beautiful hotel. That just takes money. So that only accounts to about 25% of your overall score. But to fill it with people who truly care about a guest and are invested in their experience, that's a whole lot more difficult. And so we really want to reward those properties. So an overwhelming majority of your total score from our standpoint comes from our service, right? It's certainly something that Los Cabos is very well known for. And then I just wanted to take some time and go through, like, what are some of those expectations that we are looking for? And you know, with regards to courtesy and manners, the moment in which we meet somebody, we start evaluating how courteous and well-mannered they are. And you know, it's interesting to note that, you know, we've had a lot of questions on face masks and face shields, and how do we show that we are courteous and well-mannered because we're missing half of our visible face, and we'll cover that in a moment. But sometimes what I think is that these standards don't cost anything, and yet sometimes we're not really thinking of the reason why we do it. So I actually just want to maybe take like a little deeper dive into some of these sort of general expectations and then really focus on like the purpose and the reason why. So very first one is be the first to acknowledge. And in our training, we have a little saying that we always, as a staff, want to beat the greet. And what that means is that the staff is always the first person to speak. It is never the guest. I always like to joke that this is the easiest of any standard and any expectation to meet. The moment you say buenos dias or good morning, you have a yes. If the guest has to walk up to the host stand and say like, hi, can we get a table for two? This is a no. And the tricky part is that you never get it back. It's over and done with in 1 second. And sometimes if we take a step back from this and we start to really think about all that's involved with a greeting, is that it's not just a good morning or a good afternoon, but there's something that's very strategic about what you're doing when you actually greet a guest. So first, something that I always like to say is that if you go to a business that you go to all the time, and the moment you walk in, someone tells you, welcome back or hello again, how does it make us feel? I think we can all agree that it may make us feel warm and welcomed and appreciated. That another way of thinking about this is that if someone has the ability to make you feel welcomed and appreciated in about 1 second. As long as it took someone to say welcome back is how long it took for someone to make you feel appreciated. So take that concept and put it into operations. That sometimes what we do is that we manage and that we're constantly giving feedback. And that's the way that we manage. I could say in 15 years of traveling and working with the best properties on the planet that yes, of course, feedback is important. But I think what also a great property does is that it's constantly confirming the positive. That if you walk up to somebody and say, great job, or that was perfect, well then how do you think that team member feels through the rest of the day? They feel important and they feel validated and they feel recognized. And you were able to make that person maybe stand up a little taller and feel like they're very respected in about 1 second, right? It doesn't take very long to do. But also on this note is that when we greet somebody, it's really imperative to always greet somebody to the place that you're welcoming them to. And that we talk a lot about a sense of place. And like that's our goal at the luxury level, that we're creating something that really feels distinctive, like you have to come here in order to get it. So if you take just the idea of a sense of place, well, that means that we have to appeal to as many senses of a guest as possible. So if a guest arrives, let's say to the Four Seasons here, and they get out of their car, can they see that they're at the Four Seasons? Yes. Can they smell it? Yes. Can they touch it? Yes. Can they taste it when you get your welcome margarita? Yes. And then how do you hear it? That what happens if I'm the doorman and I just walk up to the vehicle, open the car door and say, good afternoon, how may I assist you? Or would you rather hear, good afternoon, welcome to the Four Seasons? It's one of those very, very small things, but if you never welcome somebody to the place that you're welcoming them to, then technically speaking, they can kind of be anywhere because we missed one of those sensory elements. So although we all know that we should be the first to speak, there's a lot that actually goes into a greeting that we really have to pay attention to. From a smile and be engaged, we have so many questions right now of how do you smile without or with your eye or with your face mask on. And I think I've been saying this since June, but a smile doesn't mean seeing teeth. Like a smile just isn't the physical thing of your mouth. And in training, we like to joke of like the garage door smile. And what we mean by that is that, you have a front desk agent who's standing behind the desk and, their facial expression is very down. I'm just looking at the computer, and then all of a sudden, as the guest comes up, the garage door smile opens, and it's kind of fake, and it's not real. And then the moment in which you leave, that garage door closes, and then all of a sudden, they're back to the original facial expression. That smiling isn't just a physical thing, but it's an energy, right? We can learn, if we just think about like what we learn about a guest, the moment they walk up to us, we can tell whether they're in a good mood, whether they're in a bad mood, whether they're in a rush, whether we can take our time, whether they're repeat guests, first-time guests, scared, totally fine with a post-quarantine COVID environment. That we'll learn a lot about them in a very short amount of time. And it's not really sometimes about your facial expression. It's a whole lot of other things. It's our eye contact, it's our body posture, it's the tone of our voice, it's our word choice. It's a lot of things that go into the energy that we are creating. So one sort of helpful hint on all of this, especially now, is that when we're speaking to a guest, we just want to make sure that our feet are always facing a guest. That what happens as a guest when you look around, you turn around and someone is here at the pool and they're already starting to walk away and they just turn around to listen to you. Sort of the impression that you might get is that someone actually isn't focused and isn't taking the time to make you a priority. And once again, that took place in just a couple of seconds, but we don't get that impression back. It's gone, right? So I think it's a good rule of thumb whenever we are speaking to somebody, like our feet should be facing them. So that way we really feel as if the guest really feels like they have our full attention. And some of you may have seen this picture before, but this is from the housekeeping team at Faena Hotel in Miami Beach. I also think like just the way in which we're looking at this, although we may not see quote unquote their smile, we can also see that they are ready, right? Through their posture, through their eyes, through just the way that they are standing. Like a lot is coming through this photo that actually has nothing to do with their smile. And then when we start talking about speaking in a well-crafted and unscripted manner, sometimes there are lots of things that we speak about that, when it comes down to language. And yes, it's our word choice, and yes, it's our tone of our voice. It's both things. And sometimes the easiest way I can describe this is don't talk to the guest like they're a dog. And I don't know how many people on this phone or how many people on our Zoom have a dog here, but I do. And so when I speak to my dog, other than in sort of a baby voice, but I'm probably not going to walk up to a guest and say, so who's the best guest, right? But we speak to the guest, or when we speak to the guests like they're dogs, well, we give dogs commands, like sit down and roll over, come here. That when we ask the guest questions like more coffee or anything else, how does it just start to sound? It starts to sound like it doesn't match your environment. You're in this really beautiful place, but the way in which we're speaking to isn't, right? And when in training, we'll talk about how sometimes our brains become very task-oriented or service-oriented. And there's like, we need to complete a task, but do we always have the guest in mind? So sometimes I can say from my own experience, you call a restaurant and the restaurant's busy. There are a few people that are waiting in line. The host is just trying to get through the reservation. And so someone says, can I make a reservation for, Friday night? Sure, for what time? 8 p.m.? Yes, last name, first name, best phone number, any allergies or dietary restrictions, any special occasions? Great, you're confirmed, anything else? And then you're just trying to get through the reservation as fast as possible. But in reality, asking someone for last name or may I have your last name, it doesn't really take, you're talking about mere seconds. It's not saving you minutes upon minutes of time, but also the impression that we leave the guest doesn't necessarily match, once again, its environment. But, I guess in speaking like a dog, can you use those short, incomplete sentences? Absolutely. Maybe English isn't our first language, right? And so now we have to adjust the tone of our voice to make sure that we're not just giving a command. I think there's a very big difference between walking up to a table, holding a coffee pitcher or holding a coffee urn and just saying like, more coffee, or realizing that 2 guests or 4 guests are in a conversation and walking up and very politely just saying like, more coffee. It's not so much the physical words that we say, but once again, how we say them. And something that is maybe appropriate in one place might not be appropriate in another. And that's totally fine. I think that's what we mean by what we want out of that experience is for it to really feel like it's in Los Cabos. So I'm gonna play a little recording for you. And I'd like us to use our chat and let me know what you think of it. All right, so I think it's about maybe 30 seconds long. It's not a very long recording, but once again, if we can go to our chat and let me know what you think of our phone call here.
Good afternoon. Thank you for calling the hotel operator. My name is Megan. How can I help you?
Yes, I was hoping I could get some toothpaste.
Sure. Do you want some dental floss too?
No, thank you. Just the toothpaste.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, so if we go to our chat, what do we think here? All right, so we didn't use a guest's name. There's no interest. Sounds like she's in a hurry, not natural, cold. You know, the funny thing is that the guest at the end of the day get what she needed? Technically speaking, yes. But that's not what this is about, right? This isn't about just giving you something or just asking the questions, but you know, sometimes what I always like to think is that this hotel operator, this phone call may have been 20 seconds or 15 seconds. Can you make an impact in 15 or 20 seconds? Like, yes, absolutely. Sometimes it's actually easier to do it in 15 seconds than it is in 5 minutes. But you just have to be mindful and aware that you only get X amount of time in order to do it. You know, when we're training, we'll talk about this with the doorman. Is that on the front drive, how long does the doorman get with the guest? They get probably the least amount of time out of anybody upon arrival and departure. But can they make an impact? Absolutely. They are technically the very first and the very last impressions of the guest. But you just have to be able to use that very limited amount of time and use it very wisely. So we can, for our own instance here during our phone call, we could use the guest's name. We could speak in a more upbeat tone. We could have asked in full and complete sentences. We may have been able to ask, or make a statement about enjoying the rest of your day. The last closing comment is actually one from the guest, where the guest says thank you, and then that's the end of the phone call. So we didn't begin and end our conversation almost like a bookend. So it just doesn't feel warm or gracious. At the end of the day, once again, maybe the guest received their physical things, but we failed to create, once again, that sort of experience for our guest. And then when we start talking about being gracious and thoughtful and personalized, this is really where our brains need to go above and beyond just the physical and technical aspects of our job. I think that if there's anywhere on the planet that does an exceptional job at this, and actually really is Los Cabos. From my own experience there, on a few occasions, I think that the staff have like this very warm, hospitable heart to them that really shows through. And what we're looking for here are a couple of things, but very importantly, that we're looking for you to show a genuine interest. And what this means is a lot of things, but we're just looking for you to make a connection with the guest, for you to read them, respond appropriately, sort of figure them out, maybe learn something about them, prove that you learned it. You know, we have a saying that we like to use in training of collecting the golden nuggets, that as guests, they walk around with this bag of golden nuggets and they pass out little pieces of information about themselves. Sometimes as a guest, they're very good at passing out the golden nuggets and they will just tell you their life story, right? They will walk up to that desk and say, we are so happy to be here. We just flew in from Los Angeles. This is our first time to Los Cabos in over 5 years. We haven't been anywhere since the pandemic where we needed to escape our kids and our houseplants. I can't talk to my cat anymore. And they will just tell you everything about themselves. And then it's up to us to pick up all of that gold and think, like, wow, a guest that gave us all of this information. Now that we know that, we are so excited for you to be here. Well, thank you for choosing us on your first vacation since quarantine. Like, we will make sure your experience is really great. We can pass that information along, maybe able to send up a personalized amenity based on something that the guest has said, that we can do things with that information. Or we know that sometimes guests aren't so generous and hold that bag a little tighter, and we may have to ask them some questions to get to know a little bit more about them. But once again, I think it's always really important to think, like, what do we do with that information? Do we just take it and say, like, oh, I don't want it, and just throw it on the ground? Or do we prove that we learned it? So sometimes as operators, we fall under the trap of teaching our team to ask questions. That an arrival will ask the guest, you know, like, is this your first time staying with us? What brings you? How did you hear about our hotel? How was your trip in? Upon departure, we'll train everybody to say, make sure you ask the guest, how did you enjoy your stay with us? At hotel dining or in a restaurant, we'll say, you know, do a check back question and walk up and ask, how are you enjoying everything? But sometimes what we don't teach our team is, well, after you ask the question, what do you do with the information? I can tell you as a former evaluator, the amount of times I was asked, so how did you enjoy your stay with us, by the front desk or the bell team upon departure? I would say, oh, it was fantastic. I loved it. Had a great stay. Well, here's a copy of your folio. If you can just make sure your charges listed here are correct. Or they would look at me and say, like, oh, just these 2 pieces of luggage here. And that maybe in the staff member's mind, they did their job. Like, they were told to ask that question, so they asked the question. But as a guest, the question is irrelevant, because it wasn't about whether I enjoyed my stay or not. It's about the fact that you have to listen and prove that you listened to the answer. So an easy way that I always like to think about this is that almost showing a genuine interest just comes full circle. Like, what did I learn about my guest? And then how did I prove that I learned it? And it just kind of works in this little circle, that the moment I learned something, how did I prove it? If a guest comes down to the pool and gets a pool chair and is laying stomach down and has a book down on the ground and is just reading, they have a hat, they have sunglasses, what did we learn about our guest? If a guest, once again, goes to the pool or the beach, gets a chair sort of away from everybody, it's just puts their book on the ground and is lying on their stomach with a big beach hat or a pair of sunglasses and is just reading, we can ask ourselves, what did we learn about our guest? We may have learned that, sometimes people will say that we've learned that the guest likes to read. Like, I don't know if we've learned that the guest likes to read. We haven't even learned if they know how to read. What we've learned is that their behavior is that they are taking themselves away, and maybe this is not the time to engage. Maybe the guest just wants some peace and some quiet. They just want to relax, decompress, disconnect. So is this the time to walk up to the guest or get on our hands and knees, look at them in their face and say, so what are you reading? No, I think that would actually be really weird and really creepy. right? That this is not the time to do that. That same guest stands up from their pool chair and goes and sits at the bar. Now, what did we learn about them? It's like, okay, what did we learn? That they're looking for maybe something more social. They're looking to engage. So how do we prove it? We can talk to our guest. So in a way, once again, it's just what are we learning? Just something about our guest. I'd like us to go into our chat function, and I have some slides here, and I'm just gonna ask you some just really simple things of, let's say, and this is always a really fun example that we'll do with our housekeeping team, is I would like to think, I have 4 slides, that these 4 guest profiles are staying at your property. And housekeeping comes in the sort of the second day or after the first night of their stay, and housekeeping is going to provide housekeeping service. So knowing what we have as a guest, what will the housekeeper see when they enter these guests' rooms? So we'll start here. So we have single business traveler. If we can use our chat function, the housekeeper is going to walk into a guest room. What will that room look like? Neat. I mean, our papers in the desk, but everything sort of looks in order, maybe quiet, right? We might, from a housekeeper's perspective, maybe this is a guest that sleeps on one side of the bed. They may use one bath towel. There might be some limited amenities, coffee machines being used. Maybe there's some in-room dining from breakfast, but maybe this is not a room. Wi-Fi needs to be working perfectly, right? Good. So we can start to almost, even sometimes as a guest, we can, or as in operations, we can start to almost like picture what this room will look like. So let's just say we walk into a room and these are the guests that are staying in that room. What will that room look like when we walk in from a housekeeping standpoint? Right, so a disaster. There's going to be beer bottles all over, swimsuits on the floor, flip-flops. There's going to be like possibly dishes from in-room dining that maybe they ordered at 2 in the morning, still sleeping. Maybe the guests are still sleeping. Maybe as a guest, they're not going to be waking up at 9 a.m. Maybe housekeeping is going to have to take place a little later in the day. That all of a sudden, once again, we can start to almost like picture, like, oh, no disturbing all day, right? From a housekeeper's perspective, too much work, right? All right, so if we had these 2 guests, like what might we learn about them? So these 2 guests are staying with us for maybe an anniversary trip or a special birthday. If we walk in the room, what are we learning about them? Attention to detail, great. All right, maybe some jewelry, possibly a do not disturb sign. Sometimes what housekeepers will tell me is that these are quite often the guests that hang their towels up, hang their robes up. They kind of almost start to make the bed. That there might be coffee, there might be medicine, some bottles of water that are around, but pretty much like the room is sort of just nice. And then now we have a family with 2 younger kids. So we have to start thinking, like, the moment we walk in this room, we are going to see 4 people's clothes. We'll see 4 people's sets of shoes. Cecilia agreed, this room is probably going to be a total disaster. There's going to be 2 sets of toys. You're going to have 4 laptop or 4 iPhone or iPad chargers. You're going to see all of the 4 sets of swimsuits and flip-flops and beach toys to toys. You're going to see cereal on the floor. There are going to be handprints and fingerprints all over the patio windows. The patio furniture is probably going to have all the swimsuits drying out outside. Maybe there's a glass of wine for mom and dad just to need when the kids go to bed. That what's fascinating to me, and I don't mean to like stereotype anybody, but what I think is really interesting is sometimes we can just look at a family and we can already just start to imagine like what it's going to look like. Like, what are we learning? So it's sometimes a fun thing to actually ask the housekeepers, like, okay, well, if you did notice that guest, the business guest, and said that the moment you walk in that you noticed that they had coffee, well, so you learned this. Now, what did you do to prove it? Did you just restock the coffee? Or did you notice that the guest has only used the black coffee capsules? And so maybe we left them a few more, or we left them some to-go cups or some extra sugar, because that's the way that we've noticed that they like to drink their coffee. If we notice that guests are, you walk in and there are beer bottles all over the place, and extra towels, and maybe we'll just put in a note to say like, let's refresh a bucket of ice like throughout the day, or let's make sure that the minibar is really well aware that we have to restock some items, right? Or we'll put in a request, or we'll put in an internal note that, all right, well, just be mindful about housekeeping times and disturbing them early in the morning. If it's the family, or if it's the couple celebrating their anniversary, maybe we can write them a happy anniversary note from housekeeping, that we can supply them with some extra bottles of water if we know that. If there are kids in the room, that maybe we can bring a basket in and put all the toys in there, so that way the room is a bit more organized. One of my favorite things that I know that a particular hotel does is that, like, on the first day, it might take the toys and like nicely organize them on the kids and the children's beds. And then maybe on the second day, they'll line them all up on the couch and put cartoons on the TV. And then on the third day, they'll bring in a coloring book and organize the toys all around the coloring books and the crayons. So it's almost like while the kids are at the pool, or the families at the pool, the toys are actually doing something. And so as the kids come back, it's like something fun and unique for them. But once again, like, I think even though we might not be, I think the funny part about this here is that even as a guest, you might not be learning, you might not actually be physically engaging with them, but you're actually still learning a lot about them just by dealing with their stuff. It's pretty fascinating that sometimes as a guest, you never meet your housekeeper, yet the two of you are learning a whole lot about each other, even though you might not never even physically meet. And then once we start learning things about our guest, now I think this is the hallmark of really great service, when we are able to think one step ahead. And I know in my own time of being in hospitality, you have people who either just naturally understand this concept, or you will have to train someone's brain to think like this. Because if it doesn't come naturally, no one really thinks that they're not anticipatory, but it's actually quite difficult to do. So one thing that we have sort of come up with here at Forbes Travel Guide is an easy way to explain it, is almost like remember a +1. That, if we're going to answer a guest question or we're going to provide something, almost mentally or physically just take one more step. That one step is almost always going to be anticipatory. And the better we are at it, the better service becomes, but also we may make our own job a lot easier. If a guest calls down to the hotel operator and says, where can I go get, breakfast right now? And the operator just says, oh, well, you can go to our lobby restaurant. Well, that's not helpful, because although technically speaking, you may have answered the question, there was information that wasn't a service. There's no service that's yet to be provided. If we say that, our restaurant on the lobby level serves breakfast until 11 a.m., would you like me to call the restaurant and let me know that you're going down? All right, well, now I may have taken 2 or 3 extra steps. Our lobby restaurant is located on the ground floor of the hotel. It's open until 11 a.m. Would you like me to call and make a reservation? If a guest calls housekeeping and says, we just checked in, can we get some more hangers sent to the room? And we say, yes, we'll have more hangers sent up. Is there anything else I may assist you with? We're not being anticipatory. We may need to ask, absolutely, how many hangers, or what kind of hangers would you like? We have with clips, without clips, or satin hangers. And if the guest says, oh, like the ones without clips, absolutely. And how many of those would you like? Because what happens if we send a butler or a houseman and they deliver 5 hangers to the guest, and the guest looks at them and says, like, oh, actually, I wanted 10, I need 5 more. Now what happens? Well, that houseman now has to do their job twice. They have to inconvenience the guest once, but the next request in line is now going to take 5 minutes more to complete. And if we really start thinking about that throughout the whole scenario of a hotel, that we might just be wasting time because we're just not setting each other up for success. So when we really want to think about this, it's really about, okay, I've taken a request, what's one more thing? Right? If you're placing in-room dining, an in-room dining order, we should never ask the guest, like, would you like anything else? Would you like anything else? It's not a guest's job to think what else that they want. It's ours. And this is what makes a great upsell. This is what adds a lot onto the check. But, would you like to start with, some guacamole and chips? Would you like to, a few margaritas or a glass of wine with your dinner? Would you care to add on any dessert? That, as a guest, they're not professional order takers. So we need to be and step in and really think about how we complete that whole part. So something that we always like to say is that, being anticipatory is we tell an extra or we do an extra. That we say one more thing or we offer to do one more thing. Almost always that extra step is going to be the gracious part, where people tend to look at you and think like, how did you know that's what I was thinking, right? If we say to the guest, is this your first time to the pool? Yes, it is. We just checked in. Oh, well, welcome. We have chairs at the pool and at the beach. Restrooms and changing rooms are right over here. And, once I take you to your chair, a server will come over and, we're serving lunch and cocktails right now. It's like taking 4 extra steps, right? We've offered all of this information and now the guests can just enjoy. If they have to sit and think like, oh, I showed up at the pool because my room isn't ready and I'm holding my flip-flops and my bathing suit in my hands, the first thing I'm thinking of actually probably isn't a chair. It's probably where can I go change? So how we are thinking just 1, 2, 3 steps ahead, that's the hallmark of really great service. Something I always encourage anybody in a hotel to do is just ask their team a very simple question. Where is the restaurant, where is this particular restaurant located? What are the hours of the fitness center? And that when you ask that question, have the team answer it and then say one more fact about it. Because quite often what we do is that we train people to think in a very sort of one answer way, because we'll constantly quiz the team and saying, okay, well, what time does the spa open? Oh, it opens at 8 a.m. What time does the spa close? At 10 p.m. So if someone says, what time does the spa open? They'll just say, oh, it opens at 8 a.m. And we just leave it at that. So I think that's what I mean by you have to sort of train your brain to think a very particular way. And even in your own exercises on property, don't just answer one thing, but add one more. And then when we talk about elements of luxury, this is something that I always find really fascinating because it has a lot of sort of interpretations of it. And sometimes I think that when we think of luxury, we tend to just think of physical products, that we might think of the quality of the linen or a guest room design, or the quality of our amenities, or the stemware that's used in the restaurant and the quality of the silverware. But in reality, yes, like those things are, important. And if you're charging, a couple, hundreds of dollars a night for a hotel room, I think as a guest, you have the expectation that you will have high quality linen and you will have high quality amenities. But also a lot of the luxury comes down to the pride that we have in our jobs and how we show what we do through our day-to-day time on the floor. So I have just a few pictures here of just what we might learn out of really simple things. So something that's very personal to me, and I know it might sound a little ridiculous, but in almost any hotel I stay at, I will send my shoes down to be shined. So I have, oh my gosh, hundreds of photos of shoe shine presentations. And it's really fascinating to me at how something that's relatively universal and seemingly relatively simple, have so many ways in which it can be done. So if I send my shoes down to be shined and you come, or you send your shoes down to be shined and you come back to the room and this is the way in which they look like. What do we think? We may not even need to chat about this, but to me, this looks like almost like a bag of trash. What is it? It's just sort of left on the desk and we don't really know what's inside of it. Was it my wet swimsuit or is it a pair of shoes? Right? Or we have this, where I send my shoes down to be shined. They're returned in a totally different way in this beautiful basket. They're individually wrapped. It's very clear what it is that they are. If you send your shoes down to be shined and they're returned in the same bag in which you have placed them in, which is fine, and then you just take them out and this is what they look like. What did we learn about our overnight housemen or our bellmen here? That, all right, well, they don't really know what to do, or they're probably terrible at wrapping gifts. Right? If we have our shoes sent down to be shined, and these particular ones are wrapped in what we call butcher paper, almost like you went and bought a steak or a ham. You can even see that it's ripped on the upper right-hand side. Not so nice, right? Or we have individually wrapped shoes that are wrapped in hotel logo tissue paper and then secured with hotel logo ribbon that, to Mary's point, that it really is all about the details. I think this is, it's a shoe shine. It's not something that, is earth-shattering, but this is also, I think, in a way in which you start to learn a little bit about a hotel and you start to think okay, it's something that's very seemingly simple, but you're also learning a whole lot about a process and the individuals who are responsible for an individual guest item. When we think about housekeeping, this is one of my favorite pictures to use, and these are my amenities post housekeeping. So this is not a pre-housekeeping photo. This is after housekeeping had taken place. And you can see that it's just kind of a mess, that the cap or the top on the cotton products has not been replaced. But I think about this actually in a post-COVID world too, that in one instance, we might not want to touch the guest items. On the other instance though, that to me, the moment in which I walked in and I saw this, I now know that the countertops were not cleaned. So does it make me feel better to know that a housekeeper was in my room and did not clean the sink countertop, did not sanitize it because they didn't want to touch my stuff? Or that they actually went and wiped down the countertops, organized my items, and made them really neat for me? What would as a guest I appreciate more? Personally, if in a luxury environment, I want to know that everything is clean, properly handled. And in this instance, in the photo on the right, it's a particular favorite photo of mine because not only did the housekeepers organize my items, but they also organize them by height. So the tall items in the back, the shorter items in the front. But what I think is really magical about this photo is that they organize them by purpose. And so you could see shaving cream, razor, toothpaste, mouthwash, toothbrush, or toothpaste, and my grooming products. They noticed I had a little bottle of medicine, so they provided me with a bottle of water. That as a guest, once again, what I learn about in housekeeping, I think it's pretty amazing to think that, that you could really see the care coming through. Here we have some towels in the spa, and they're towels and they're available. Once again, I think that we learn a couple of things here is that maybe the person on the left, yes, there are a couple missing. There are 2 missing, but these are not press photos, but the towels are kind of like unevenly folded and kind of all over the place. And the photo on the right, to me, is actually particularly funny because there's no way that the guests used the top cubby holes of the towels. That they're using the bottom ones first, so they're not even stocking the towels in their proper holes. They're just sort of filling like the last 2 rows and that's it. So it's almost like, it's just kind of like a little lazy. Or you can go to a hotel and we have towels. And so you can see the level of detail here that each are individually perfectly folded, like the lines of the towels are all the same, like they're rolled and all face to the right. That we learn here is that the hotel actually wants us to take something very simple and think about, okay, well, we want you to sort of think like you can get towels in the spa anywhere, but the nicest towels you may ever see are going to be here, and that's the impression that we want. So I love the fact that this particular spa is really thinking not just that we do something, but the best way to do it. What I found really fascinating is, how the standards are starting to be applied in sort of a post-COVID environment, or a post-quarantine environment, I should say, because we're not post-COVID, unfortunately. But, as we start to rethink like how a hotel operates, how we start to think like about our gestures that we offer to the guests, like what's good, what's hygienic, what makes our team comfortable, what makes the guest comfortable. It's interesting that, a guest in mid-October is very different than a guest in mid-July. Starting to understand more about what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and what was maybe afraid of performing housekeeping services. That I think a guest is getting pretty comfortable with a member of the housekeeping team coming into the room. That valet services and bell services are back, but also a sense of creativity of what we're offering our guest. And so just have a few examples here, but from the Mark, which is a property in New York, that they have a sort of a welcome kit that includes a welcome or a face mask, sanitizing gel, gloves, hand sanitizing wipes, and a little welcome note along. And the whole thing is actually wrapped in kind of beautiful hotel logo tissue paper. Sort of makes that it's not just like we're requiring you to wear a mask, but like we're really thinking 1, 2, 3 steps ahead of you as to how you're going to wear it. Right? Something that I particularly like about the Four Seasons Hotel in Seattle is one thing that they are doing is that the general manager, hotel manager, food and beverage director, and rooms director are recording personalized messages to each arriving guest as their welcome amenity. So when you arrive to the hotel, there'll be a little welcome note with a QR code. You scan your phone to the QR code, and it will maybe Ms. Palladino, who's the general manager of the hotel, with a little video that says, Mr. Wielgopolan, welcome to the Four Seasons Hotel Seattle. That although they may not be providing a food product or sort of a traditional quote unquote welcome amenity, that they're actually doing something that's really personalized. They're telling you a little bit about what's available at the hotel and the days in which you're there, maybe something about the weather, something about the city, but really finding a unique way to provide a personalized experience in almost sort of a no-touch way. If it's fitness classes, if your fitness center is closed or not available, that you're able to just go on the hotel channel and sign up for some on-demand fitness classes. Something that I particularly like about the Hotel Bel Air is that they have, for their room service, they offer a picnic. And this is a press photo, but something I always like to point out when I bring this photo up is that my favorite part about it is not that it's actually beautiful and you see the swan swimming in the back, but this looks to me like two people went on a picnic and wrote down everything that they hate about a picnic and figured out a way to solve it. That you look at those pillows and how they're propped up, because maybe when you're having a picnic, it's just hard on your back and you never have like a comfortable place to sit. So maybe they'll give you almost like kind of like a built-in couch that you could lean up against and then not have to fall back. That if you have a glass of wine with you, like where do you put it? Because you can't put it on the ground because it will knock over. Well, let's put some tables on there. So that way it's very easy for you to have your beverages. You know, that sometimes if, you know, you don't want all of the food on the ground, so they put like little sort of ottomans and trays so that your food can be elevated and, you know, that ants aren't like taking it away. But what I particularly appreciated about this is that we really thought of the whole experience, and maybe we went out and did it before we launched this whole program. So that way, as a guest, you really see that you know, once again, they thought about the whole process. And just based on a request, we're going to go back a couple of slides. So we have the mark here. So once again, we have sort of working clockwise. We have the bag, the black bag that everything was in. We have a welcome note from the general manager. We have gloves. We have hand sanitizing solution, hand sanitizing wipes, and then a face mask. And then underneath it is actually the physical like hotel logo tissue paper that it was on. All right, so back up here. And then, you know, something that the Barclay did that I think was pretty amazing is that they had with the Blue Bar, sort of an iconic property in London, that you had the ability to go online and actually order a cocktail to be delivered on a bicycle to your house or to your office. So if you wanted to have a Barclay happy hour, you can actually have it with their signature drinks being prepared literally door side, which I think is a pretty incredible opportunity. Or at Ocean House, if they weren't having a bar, that they set up bar carts for this to go around property and go room to room in order to make you a room side cocktail. Or something, or from the spa point of view, that the spa at the Post Oak here in Houston, that, you know, one of the things that they do upon arrival is they take your temperature and then sanitize your hands, and then afterwards give you this really beautiful lavender sort of hand wipe, just so that way your hands aren't sticky and then actually they're nicely scented. In the center, you get your own individual locker with your own robe. You can sort of see in the middle shelf that they have a set of amenities in sort of a plastic bag that are your amenities. On the upper shelf up to the top, there's a bag should you have anything to bring with you, along with individually wrapped sandals and then 2 towels for you. So it's sort of thought once again about everything. And then on the right, that there are no public beverages that are available, but while you are waiting for your treatment, they bring over a little tray with an individual juice for you to be able to enjoy while you are just waiting for your therapist. Right? You know, and when we think about sort of like what's next throughout all of this, you know, just sort of a couple of key points that I think are really interesting, that sort of the basics of hospitality, I think our guests still want. They still want us to be proactive in greetings. They still want us to be nice, polite. I think people are aching and yearning for a sense of graciousness and genuine interest and anticipatory service that, you know, we haven't traveled, or in the very limited amount of travel that we've been doing, that, you know, there's still like a lot of hunger for it. But I also think that, you know, just as a couple of key pieces of advice for everybody is that, you know, creativity is really key. That, if we've thought about like what our whole operation has had to do over the past 6 months, we've had to almost reinvent operations. We've had to reinvent how we, clock in people. We've had to reinvent employee dining. We've had to reinvent, guest dining. Almost every aspect of a property has been rethought of. But I also think that this is a really unique time that maybe we can even start to rethink like decades old processes and procedures. That maybe the way in which we've done in-room dining for so many years, can we rethink? Like, does it need to have, 30 plus things on the table for breakfast? Or can we maybe streamline something and make it, once again, or make it much more user-friendly on everyone's end than this sort of like cumbersome table with all of these things on it. What works in one place may not work in another. I think this is particularly important for anyone who works for a hotel where decisions might be made for you out of a corporate office. That sometimes what is going to work in a city hotel might not necessarily work in a resort hotel, or vice versa. Yeah, we really need to role play. We really need to think about how those experiences impact our guests before we start to really think about before training everybody and putting this all into place and realizing that it doesn't work out based on where we are. I think this is even a greater time to embrace authenticity and really show off to our guests who we are, what it is that we stand for. Once again, I know this is certainly a common trend beforehand, but I think that today's guests is really going to want a very singular experience and really feel like they can only go there in order to get it. And then, I think that when we start talking about what I mean by operation should not get in the way of a guest experience, that yes, we have to put in a lot of sort of COVID measures into place, but we do have to once again think about that, yes, there is some adapting to a guest, but we just have to think about it from their side. I would really encourage you to, if we're going to put something into place, like role play and be the guest and really think about how it affects them. I'll give an example from another hotel that I was speaking with that said, that once they reopened, they sort of removed everything from the room. They removed the hair dryers to the ice buckets. They removed the robe, the sandals, all of the magazines. And then they had their guests start to check in, who then had to call to get a hair dryer and to get a robe and to get all of these things. And on their very first day they opened, they had a glitch and a complaint from a guest who said, okay, so you took my hair dryer out, but yet I have to call for it. And when I open the door, I have a person delivering me the hair dryer. So in a sense, you're actually exposing me more by having me call for each thing than if you had just left it in the room. And the hotel sort of like took the feedback and was like, oh yeah, you're kind of right. That why are we knocking on the door to deliver all of the items and hand delivering them when we remove them all out of the room? So now it actually sort of is making it worse than thinking about it from the guest experience. So once again, I know that we are living through living through the most extraordinarily difficult and challenging time that we may ever face. But I also think that from a guest experience, this is a really interesting time in which, once again, we can really show off who we are, truly show that we value our guests, and really make sure that their experience is the best. So I just want to say thank you for your time today. We'll leave our chat open. We've got a few more minutes to answer any questions that you might have. So if you have any, please, you can place those into the chat and we can tackle them. And so I guess I'll just pause and see once again if anyone has any questions. Well, to be an evaluator is the number one most popular question. So a couple of things. One, it certainly helps to have some operational experience from an evaluator standpoint. We really like to hire people who understand what it's like to give that service. So that way you can understand that, that it's not just walking into a hotel and waving your magic wand. The one thing about an evaluator that's a very interesting role that probably a lot of people don't think about is that you have to be an exceptionally good writer. Because what you have to do is you have to take something that happened to you in person, almost translate it into words on paper, so that way a third person who was never there can read and understand your experience in an objective way. So, some things that you'll notice in a Forbes Travel Guide report is that we never wrote like the guest felt or the guest thought, because those are very subjective things with very subjective words. So it either like, this is what happened and this is what didn't happen. And so even from your own coaching or something along those lines, like if you're just going to do some mystery shops for your own team, like you could already start to like think about, once again, like it's not just yeses and nos, but you're painting a picture for someone who wasn't there to read and almost magically transport themselves next to you. So those are some two key things. But if you are interested, you can always go to the careers page of our website and look at any future opportunities. Sadly, there aren't probably going to be many for a little bit, as global, it's tough to globally inspect right now, for sure. Oh.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Hello, everyone. It's Lourdes again from Miami. Jeff is in Houston, and we both wish we could be in Los Cabos.
That's for sure. Putting this presentation together was very painful. To see that all of these gorgeous, beautiful places, and almost wish that you could transport yourself there. That's for sure.
Well, for all of us, I have to say, Jeff, thank you so much. We're very honored because Jeff brings so much experience, and not just on knowledge from so many years of doing what he's been doing, but also because he has exposure to the world. And so him and his team bring the world to you through the standards and other personal experience. So thank you again, Jeff. That was wonderful. Thank you, the comité, for allowing us to be here. Obviously, we work closely with many of you who are out there. I recognize some names. We do training with you. Some of you are rated hotels. Some of you are going through the rating process. It is an honor to work with you, and we know that you yourselves, this particular group, are experts training. You do this every day at your property. We recognize that, we value that, we congratulate you on trying to even get better. What we do is we support you. And so when we come to your property or do a virtual training similar to what Jeff just did, we actually have over 30 courses that we are now offering virtually in this manner. A little even more engaged. Jeff was kind of playing it to see what would happen along, but many of our virtual trainings are a lot more engaged with surveys and exercises and fun things to keep the staff entertained. So we offer all this. We know that you do it every day. We want to support you. Sometimes it's nice to bring an outside source, especially a group as distinguished as our trainers, to help you, to reinforce what you're doing, and also introduce new ideas, new processes. So we're available for you. If you want any further information, please reach out to myself or to Jeff, and we'd be happy to talk about a plan, or just in general, if you want to ask us any questions, just as colleagues to support you, please do reach out. We do everything we can to help. So I wish you a wonderful week. I know Jeff does too. You have a long week ahead, but it looks very exciting. And we look forward to staying in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lourdes and Jeff. You certainly gave us many golden nuggets for a 5-star service. No? And so I will right now share the link to the survey, to the feedback survey. We would like to continue improving as a committee and to get the feedback from all participants. Thank everyone for their presence and for for supporting us with the technical difficulties. We will be sharing the link so that everybody can see the complete conference and that we recorded on YouTube. No? So right now, on behalf of the whole committee, I would like to share with you, we have prepared for you a diploma. So this is for you, Lourdes, and for Jeff, for your support and for allowing us to, yes, to be with you, no, today. So
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Let me, Jeff.
this is your diploma, Lourdes, and we have also one for Jeff. We will be sending it to you, but I just want to show it.
Well, thank you. Thank you again, Jeff, for joining us. Thank you, Comité, for having us. And we just wish you the best for the rest of the year and beyond.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Be safe.